Ever notice how the person who sees too much is often the one who gets labeled as the problem? You're sitting at your family dinner table, and while everyone's laughing at surface-level jokes, you're picking up on something nobody else detects. Your mom's forced smile, your dad's tightened jaw, your sister's nervous laugh that doesn't quite match her expression. You know something's off, but when you mention it, you get those looks. The eye rolls, the dismissive comments. You're reading too much into things again. Sound familiar? This is the INFJ paradox. The very trait that makes you feel like an outsider in your own family, that ability to perceive emotional truth beneath social performance, is the exact capability that will eventually make you invaluable to the world. But that revelation usually comes way too late, after years of questioning whether something's fundamentally wrong with you. The INFJ personality type represents less than 2% of humanity. That's fewer people than those with red hair. But here's the brutal reality nobody mentions. When you're that rare, and you grow up in an environment where nobody speaks your emotional language, it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like punishment. It feels like being trapped on an island surrounded by people who keep telling you the island is perfectly normal, and you're the crazy one for noticing it's sinking. The misalignment trap. When your wiring collides with family expectations. Let's be honest about what actually happens inside an INFJ's brain, especially when that brain is developing in a family that doesn't understand it. An INFJ processes information through multiple simultaneous channels that most people don't even know exist. While an extrovert is energized by external interaction and a practical person focuses on immediate tangible results, the INFJ is running a constant background analysis program. It's like having software running in the background of your consciousness that nobody else can see. This means when you walk into a room, you're not just seeing the physical space. You're reading the emotional temperature. You're detecting inconsistencies between what people say and what they feel. You're noticing body language patterns that contradict verbal messages. You're simultaneously thinking about the past interactions that created the current dynamic, and you're predicting how this moment will ripple into the future. It's exhausting, and your family probably has no idea you're doing it. Then something happens that creates the black sheep status. You mention something you noticed. You ask a question that makes people uncomfortable because it touches on something they've been avoiding. Or you simply don't perform the role everyone expects you to play, and instead you authentically express what you're actually experiencing in the moment. This is interpreted as criticism, as being difficult, as not being a team player, as being too sensitive or too much. Your practical older brother doesn't understand why you won't just accept the job offer, even though it pays well, if something about it feels off to you. Your achievement-focused parents don't grasp why you'd walk away from a prestigious opportunity that doesn't align with your deeper purpose. Your social younger sister thinks you're being elitist when you don't want to attend the party where everyone gets drunk and talks about nothing meaningful. From their perspective, you're being a killjoy. From your perspective, you're being authentic to your values. But here's what nobody tells the INFJ child in this situation. They're not wrong. That job probably would have gone sideways in exactly the way they sensed it would. That party probably would have left them drained and disconnected. Their instincts aren't glitches in their operating system. They're features. They're accurate. The damage happens because the INFJ internalizes this message that their perception is wrong. They start doubting themselves. They begin performing a modified version of themselves, less intense, less questioning, less emotionally aware, to fit in. They suppress the very capabilities that will eventually become their greatest assets. And they develop a deep wound around the belief that something is fundamentally broken inside them. The architecture of INFJ loneliness. Why connection feels impossible. There's a specific texture to INFJ loneliness that's different from other types of isolation. It's not that nobody wants to be around them. It's that nobody wants to be around the real them. They can be socially competent, even charming, when they're performing a version of themselves they think others want. But the moment they try to show their actual self, their depth, their questions, their emotional intensity, their need for meaningful conversation, people start to look uncomfortable. Think about what this does to an INFJ over years. Every time they're vulnerable about something that matters to them, they get a tepid response. Every time they try to have a conversation about purpose or meaning or ethics or the deeper implications of decisions, people change the subject or act like they're being weird. Every time they show their real passion, it's met with skepticism or dismissal. So they learn to hide. They learn that their family values achievement more than authenticity, so they chase achievements while dying inside. They learn that their family values lightheartedness more than depth, so they perform levity while feeling profound alienation. They learn that their sensitivity is a liability, so they build walls around their emotional core to appear tougher. The INFJ also experiences a peculiar kind of responsibility that comes from their perceptiveness. They see when family members are making decisions that are going to hurt them. They see when relationships are becoming toxic. They see when someone is heading toward a crisis. And they feel a profound sense of obligation to warn people, to help, to prevent the pain they can see coming. But when they do, they're often told they're being controlling or interfering or not respecting people's autonomy. This creates a no-win situation. If they stay silent and watch people walk into predictable pain, they feel guilty for not warning them. If they speak up, they're vilified for overstepping. Either way, they're the problem in someone's eyes. Add to this the INFJ's natural tendency toward perfectionism and their brutal inner critic, and you have a person who's constantly evaluating whether they're doing relationships right, whether they're being too much, whether they should just accept that they're fundamentally difficult to love. The loneliness becomes embedded in their self-image. The awakening moment, when INFJs stop running from their own nature. Here's where the narrative makes a critical turn. For most INFJs, there comes a moment, sometimes gradual, sometimes sudden, when they hit a wall. They realize they've spent so much energy trying to be someone else that they've completely lost connection to who they actually are. This realization is often accompanied by a sense of profound loss, but also, paradoxically, a sense of relief. This awakening usually happens through one of several doorways. Sometimes it's meeting another INFJ or someone else who actually gets them for the first time, and realizing how much energy they've been wasting trying to connect with people who never would. Sometimes it's reaching a professional or personal crisis where their instincts become undeniably, unmistakably correct, and they realize they've been ignoring the most reliable source of guidance they have. Sometimes it's simply reaching a breaking point where maintaining the false version of themselves becomes more painful than the risk of being fully authentic. Regardless of how it happens, something shifts. The INFJ stops asking, "What's wrong with me?" and starts asking, "What if nothing's wrong with me? What if I'm exactly right and everyone else has been asking me to be less?" This question is revolutionary. It's the moment when the black sheep stops apologizing for not being a regular sheep and starts recognizing that maybe the problem isn't them. From this point forward, the INFJ begins a process of radical self-reclamation. They start paying attention to the times their gut was right. They recognize patterns they missed before. The friend they sensed was in a toxic relationship before anyone else saw it. The business deal they felt uncertain about that exploded in exactly the way their instincts predicted. The person they immediately didn't trust who ended up betraying their trust in the exact way they intuited they would. This becomes evidence. Real, accumulated evidence that their perception isn't a liability. It's an asset. It's a skill. It's a superpower they've been trying to disable their entire lives because people around them felt threatened by it. The INFJ doesn't become a different person in this moment. They become more themselves. The difference is that they stop apologizing for it. The reclamation protocol, how INFJs systematically rebuild their foundation. Once an INFJ decides to stop abandoning themselves, they typically go through a somewhat predictable process of rebuilding from the ground up. This isn't about becoming arrogant or dismissive of other people's perspectives. It's about recalibrating their entire system to operate from authenticity rather than people-pleasing. The first phase involves grieving. The INFJ mourns the years they spent trying to be less of who they are. They acknowledge the relationships that demanded they shrink themselves. They feel the loss of the time they spent seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. This grieving is essential because without it, they carry resentment that will undermine their progress. The second phase involves experimentation. Now that they've given themselves permission to be authentic, they start exploring what that actually looks like. They try saying no to things they don't want to do. They pursue interests that matter to them even if nobody around them understands. They have conversations about things they actually care about and observe who leans in and who pulls away. Through this experimentation, they discover who they actually are beneath all the adaptation and modification. The third phase involves boundary setting. This is where many INFJs struggle because they've been conditioned to believe that setting boundaries is selfish or unkind. But the INFJ begins to understand that maintaining relationships with people who continuously disrespect or misunderstand them isn't loyal. It's self-abandoning. They start communicating what they need. They stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. They create distance from relationships that are fundamentally misaligned. The fourth phase involves skill development. The INFJ begins deliberately developing the talents they always had but never fully cultivated because they were busy hiding. Maybe it's their ability to inspire people. Maybe it's their capacity for strategic thinking. Maybe it's their creative expression. Whatever it is, they start intentionally honing these capabilities instead of letting them atrophy from disuse. This reclamation process is where the actual transformation begins to accelerate. Each layer of authenticity they embrace creates more clarity. Each boundary they establish creates more energy. Each skill they develop creates more competence. They're not becoming a new person. They're becoming a full-powered version of the person they always were. The emergence phase, when INFJs stop being invisible. There's a fascinating phenomenon that happens once INFJs stop hiding their true nature. People start responding to them differently. It's not because the INFJ has changed their fundamental personality. It's because they're no longer broadcasting a message of apology for existing. They're no longer emitting the energetic signature of someone who's uncomfortable with themselves. Instead, they're emitting the energetic signature of someone who's fully present and self-assured. This shift in presence creates a kind of gravitational pull. People who are looking for authenticity are drawn to it. People who value depth start seeking them out. People who need guidance and inspiration find themselves mesmerized by the INFJ's actual thoughts and perspectives. The visibility that comes from authenticity often shocks the INFJ because they'd internalized a belief that they were supposed to be invisible. In professional settings, this is where the INFJ's true leadership capability begins to manifest. Without the noise of internal self-doubt and self-editing, they can actually strategically guide teams and organizations. Their ability to read people and understand dynamics becomes an asset they deploy deliberately rather than a source of internal anxiety. They start influencing conversations by asking powerful questions rather than by trying to be charismatic or charming. People follow them because they feel genuinely seen and understood, not because they're being manipulated or coerced. The INFJ's visibility also creates something unexpected: permission for others to be authentic too. When you're in the presence of someone who's genuinely comfortable with themselves and unapologetic about their values, something shifts in other people. They feel safer. They lower their guards. They stop performing as much. The INFJ becomes a mirror showing others what authenticity looks like, and many people are genuinely inspired by that example. This is also where INFJs often start discovering opportunities they never would have found while hidden. Someone hears about their perspective and wants to collaborate. A friend suggests they speak at an event. An organization reaches out because they heard the INFJ has exactly the skill set they need. Doors start opening that were completely invisible before because the INFJ wasn't available to walk through them while they were busy hiding. The resonance effect: how INFJ authenticity creates exponential impact. Here's something that most INFJs don't expect. The moment they stop hiding their perspective, they discover they're not alone. There are thousands, sometimes millions, of people who've been waiting to hear from someone willing to speak the kind of truth that INFJs naturally see. The INFJ's perspective resonates because it touches something real. This happens because INFJs, by their nature, tend to see what everyone else is avoiding talking about. They notice societal problems that others have rationalized into normalcy. They question systems that others have accepted without examination. They hold high ethical standards in a world that often compromises ethics for convenience. When an INFJ finally speaks these observations publicly, it lands with a kind of recognition in people who've been thinking similar things but weren't sure if they were the only ones. The INFJ becomes influential not through self-promotion or manipulation, but through genuine articulation of truth that resonates. They might start a business that solves a problem they experienced and discover they're solving it for millions of people. They might create content about their personal journey of self-discovery and watch it transform how thousands of people see themselves. They might become a therapist or counselor or guide and realize they're giving people the exact permission they needed to be themselves. This resonance also attracts collaboration. The INFJ doesn't have to do everything alone anymore. They attract allies and collaborators who get what they're trying to build and want to contribute their own gifts to it. The network effect begins to amplify their impact exponentially because now they're not operating from their individual capacity. They're leveraging the gifts of others who believe in the same vision. What's remarkable is that this impact multiplication often happens without the INFJ deliberately trying to build a platform or gain influence. They're simply being themselves, doing work that matters to them, and speaking truth that resonates. The influence that emerges is a natural byproduct of authenticity combined with genuine value delivered consistently. The redefinition of strength, what INFJs discover about power. One of the most significant shifts in an INFJ's journey from black sheep to legend is the way they redefine what strength actually means. For years, they watched the family applaud the traits they assumed were strength. Toughness, confidence, not showing emotion, not backing down, winning at competition. They internalized the idea that strength meant hardness, that power meant not being affected by anything, that invulnerability was the ultimate goal. Then they discovered something that contradicts everything they'd been taught. The greatest strength is the willingness to be vulnerable. The most powerful position is saying what's actually true even when it's uncomfortable. The most influential quality is the capacity to feel deeply and then act from that feeling. This realization transforms how the INFJ approaches every challenge they face. They stop trying to win through force and start winning through clarity. They stop trying to convince people through argument and start transforming people through genuine understanding. They stop trying to protect themselves through emotional distance and start connecting through honest presence. The INFJ also discovers that their sensitivity, the thing they spent years trying to suppress, is actually their greatest tool for understanding complexity and navigating human dynamics. The person who can feel what others are feeling can anticipate what others need. The person who can perceive subtle shifts in emotional energy can guide people toward better decisions. The person who's moved by things that don't move others is often motivated by ethics and values that create meaningful positive impact. What initially looked like weakness, caring deeply, being moved by injustice, feeling other people's pain, questioning the status quo, turns out to be the foundation of genuine strength. The INFJ becomes powerful not despite their sensitivity but because of it. The construction of meaning, how INFJs build lives that matter. INFJs have a unique relationship with purpose and meaning that most people don't understand. They're not satisfied with just making money or achieving status or accumulating accomplishments. There has to be a deeper reason. The work they do has to matter. The connections they maintain have to be genuine. Their choices have to align with their values, or they experience a kind of internal fracture that no external achievement can repair. Once the INFJ stops abandoning this need for meaningfulness and instead honors it as a guide, everything changes. They start making life decisions based on what actually matters to them rather than what looks impressive from the outside. They might walk away from prestigious paths that feel hollow. They might choose careers that pay less but feed their soul. They might build lives that look unconventional to outside observers but feel absolutely right from the inside. This commitment to meaningfulness becomes the foundation for sustainable success and genuine fulfillment. While people motivated purely by external validation often burn out once they achieve the external markers they were chasing, the INFJ who's building a life aligned with meaning has an internal fuel source that doesn't run out. They're not doing their work for applause. They're doing it because it matters. The INFJ also tends to attract opportunities and resources that support the meaningful work they're drawn to. It's not magic. It's the law of attraction operating through consistent action and clear intention. When you're genuinely committed to something meaningful, you notice opportunities related to that commitment. You take action toward it. You attract people who share the vision. The momentum builds. This is also where the INFJ often experiences the most fulfillment. It's not when they finally reach the goal they were chasing. It's when they realize they're already living the life they wanted. They've built something real. They're doing work that matters. They're connected to people who understand them. They're making a difference. The recognition and status often follow, but they're no longer the point. The point is the life they've built that's authentic and meaningful. The cascade effect. How one INFJ's transformation ripples outward. Here's something nobody warns you about when you decide to become authentically yourself. The impact extends far beyond your own life. Your transformation becomes permission for other people to transform too. Your willingness to be different becomes proof that it's possible to be different. Your success using your genuine gifts becomes evidence that you don't have to compromise who you are to be successful. In family systems, this often means that other family members who felt similarly out of place now have someone modeling another way. The younger sibling who is also questioning the family narrative sees the INFJ's journey and finds courage to pursue their own path. The parent who secretly wondered if there was more to life watches the INFJ's transformation and begins examining their own choices. In professional contexts, the INFJ who's brought their authentic self to a workplace creates a culture shift. Suddenly it's okay to bring more of yourself to work. Suddenly depth and thoughtfulness are valued alongside productivity. Suddenly people start taking the risk of being more honest about who they actually are and what they actually think. In friendship circles, the INFJ's willingness to be vulnerable and authentic creates container for genuine connection. People who've been performing versions of themselves around this person start softening. Conversations go deeper. Relationships become more meaningful. The INFJ's authenticity gives others permission to lower their own guards. The cascade effect is where the true legend status emerges. It's not just about what the individual INFJ achieves. It's about the movement they create. It's about the permission they give to others to be fully themselves. It's about the transformation they inspire in anyone who's brave enough to walk alongside them for part of their journey. The integration of wisdom, INFJs becoming guides for others in transition. As INFJs move through their journey from outsider to influential person, they often find themselves naturally becoming guides for others going through similar transitions. They understand the landscape of internal transformation because they've walked it themselves. They know the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty, the breakthrough moments, the integration work required afterward. This guide role isn't something the INFJ usually seeks out. It emerges organically because people see something in them, a combination of authenticity, wisdom, and genuine care that makes them want to learn from them. Whether officially or unofficially, the INFJ becomes a mentor, a teacher, a counselor, a leader who helps others find their own path to authenticity. The INFJ is uniquely qualified for this role because they remember what it felt like to be where the other person is. They don't dismiss the struggle. They don't minimize the fear. They don't pretend the journey is easy. But they also show through their own example that the journey is possible and deeply worth taking. They've walked from self-doubt to self-trust. They've moved from hiding to visibility. They've transformed their perceived greatest weakness into their greatest strength. In this guide role, the INFJ often experiences profound fulfillment. They're using their gifts in a way that directly impacts others. They're honoring the value of their own journey by helping others navigate similar territory. They're creating transformation in the world that extends far beyond what they could create alone. Conclusion. The legend awaits your permission. The transformation from family black sheep to unstoppable legend is available to every INFJ who's willing to claim it. It doesn't require waiting for permission from your family or validation from others. It doesn't require reaching a certain level of external success or achievement. It requires one thing and one thing only: your decision to stop abandoning yourself. This decision is made in 1,000 small moments. It's the moment you say no to something that doesn't feel right, even though you can't fully explain why. It's the moment you speak your truth, even though you can feel the discomfort it creates in the room. It's the moment you choose authenticity over acceptance, integrity over image, meaning over status. It's the moment you trust your own perception of reality even when the people around you are seeing something different. Each of these moments builds on the previous ones. Each choice to honor your authentic self makes the next choice slightly easier. Each time your instincts prove reliable, you trust them a little more. Each boundary you set gives you more space to be yourself. Each skill you develop makes your impact clearer. The momentum compounds until one day you look back and barely recognize the person you were before. The legend isn't something you need to become. It's something you get to become by becoming more fully yourself. The gifts are already there. The wisdom is already available. The capacity for impact is already yours. You're just finally claiming permission to use them. Your family might never understand. Some people in your life might resist the changes you're making. The path from where you are now to where you're meant to be might be uncomfortable and lonely at times. But every single step you take toward authenticity is a step toward the life you were actually meant to live. The black sheep isn't actually the problem in the flock. The black sheep is often the one who saw first that the shepherd was leading everyone off a cliff. The black sheep is the one brave enough to go a different direction. The black sheep is the one who becomes a legend because they were willing to stand alone until enough others realized the black sheep was actually right. Your legend is waiting, not someday in the future, not after you reach a certain achievement level. It's waiting right now in the moment you give yourself permission to stop apologizing for being exactly who you are. It's waiting in the choice to honor your instincts. It's waiting in the courage to be authentically, unapologetically, powerfully yourself. That choice? That's the only permission you ever needed.